Hello YouTube, for a really long time I've wanted to make a Gamorrean Guard head from Return of the Jedi, but I haven't been brave enough, basically I think because it's a big head and there's quite a lot of detail in it. Anyway, I bought this doll's head from a car boot sale, really cheap, like 2 or 3 quid, and I thought I'd just cut all the hair off it and I'll use this as my kind of starting point. I think I've mentioned in previous videos that Return of the Jedi was the first film that I ever saw at the cinema. So for that reason, and also because of all the cool creatures that are in it, it remains to this day my favourite of all the Star Wars movies. Right, this is the doll's head with the hair chopped off. I didn't have to shave it really close to the skin or anything because obviously the Gamorrean Guard head is massive. So I will be building quite substantial layers on top of this. I'm also going to be making quite a big set of shoulders for this, so I thought I would mount it on a pole and then screw the pole down into a really wide base. It needs to be a wide base because this thing's going to end up pretty heavy and I don't want it to topple over. My next idea was just to use some dowel as supports for the shoulders, so I've literally just screwed these in with some really long screws straight into the neck. And I think, the angle might not be right at this stage, but it doesn't matter because I can build the shoulders up over it. So for this project, I'm mainly going to be using crumpled up aluminium foil. So I went out and I bought myself 4 rolls of 30-meter aluminium foil. I'd probably end up getting through most of that, to be honest. You can see that this is a very basic shape that I've done initially, but once it's there you can always keep adding to it. It's just a starting point. This next bit was really good fun, just getting so much aluminium foil and just squashing it over the whole head just to get this really basic shape. And yeah, just being able to kind of push in to get the eye sockets and leave the sort of eyebrow ridge at the top, and then just squash in to get the nostrils and the rough kind of shape of the cheeks and the mouth. And yeah, I was really happy that, fairly quickly it started to get a very basic look of a Gamorrean Guard. So the aluminium foil is not very strong, and I wanted to start getting some strength into this. So what I've done is I've used the paper mache technique over the whole thing. So I've used super PVA glue or wood flooring PVA glue, which is basically the same. It's really strong, a lot stronger than normal PVA, and kitchen paper. So I just tear up bits of kitchen paper into kind of small, easy to manage pieces, and then I just glue a patch, put the kitchen paper over the top, glue over the top of that, and just keep building up layer after layer. You can see this is with a couple of kind of shoulder pads added, which makes the shoulders a bit higher. And I will gradually kind of obviously build this up. You can see I've put this lower jaw on as well, big lip, and I've pushed in here, look, to give 4 kind of tooth sockets that I'll be able to make some teeth and then just slot those into those sockets. I'll show you the back as well at this point, which is even more basic than the front. It really looks a bit kind of wonky at this stage, but again, I can add more and more to this just bit by bit. There's quite a lot of patience needed doing a sculpt like this because you go through so many stages of it looking really awful, but you just have to have faith that you're going to be adding more and more to it. It's going to get better and better as you go along. Here you can see that I added more aluminium foil at the bottom just to make it even deeper, and then I've gone over that with some more kitchen paper and PVA. You can see the teeth here. What I've done is just make them very loosely, again out of squashed up aluminium foil, just to get the right sort of dimensions, and then I'll go over these using some Milliput to refine them and make them look much more like teeth. So here are those teeth with a coating of Milliput. It's not a very thick coating, it doesn't need to be because Milliput is so strong, but you can see here I've put them on this bit of aluminium foil just to allow them to dry. It's good because even if they dry on the aluminium foil you can easily peel them off afterwards. I wasn't really fussed about these being a little bit lumpy at this stage because a nice thing about Milliput is once it's hardened, you can use sandpaper to kind of sand it all down and refine it. If you haven't used Milliput before, it's a 2-part putty. You mix the two parts together and it sets rock hard at room temperature in about 4 hours. So here he is with the teeth firmly glued into place. I've also gone over the cheek areas with some aluminium foil and again some paper mache to strengthen it all up. And I've worked on the lower lip and the lower jaw by just adding a layer of Milliput to that as well. This forms a really nice, really strong crust. Okay, I've also attached the horns, and the way I did this was to drill a hole into each horn, and I've attached a dowel into each horn, and then I drilled a hole in the head and just fed the dowel down through each side to stick the horns on. I used super glue as well to get them in position, but I'll reinforce the join later with even more Milliput. Right, I made the bulge in his chin even bigger in the middle, and I've also added a bulge on either side to kind of widen the jaw a little bit as well, make it a better shape. I've also added Milliput to the front of his sort of under his nose, that sort of section. I've done that nice kind of line down the middle. You can see I've built up the actual nose, given him that nice kind of pig nose kind of snout kind of shape, and I've also added these ridges underneath his eyes. The eyes were done just with a couple of marbles, which actually works quite well. I'm thinking I might leave them as they are. On the horns, I know they look too long at the moment, but more Milliput will be added to attach them on, and that will give the appearance that they've kind of shrunk in size a little bit. On the cheek areas, I think I've added even more aluminium foil and kitchen paper just to build up those, and I think they're starting to look more accurate. I cut out this disc just out of a couple of bits of cardboard, glued them together to give the right sort of thickness, and this will be the sort of disc that goes on the front of his chest, like a sort of chest plate. I will obviously work on this with more Milliput for all the detailing and everything later, but that's a good way of starting just with a bit of cardboard. I'm going to make a similar cardboard strip that's going to go across for his strap. You can see on the shoulders I've gone even higher, so just more aluminium foil. I've made sure I've left a gap at each side, mainly for that strap that goes across. But yeah, the shoulders are much bigger. I'm planning to do a very similar thing using the cardboard to create his sort of helmet. So he's got a really nice kind of arrow shape that goes on his forehead here, and then he's got the bits that come at either side. I'll make that completely separately and then stick it on afterwards. Okay, here you can see him with his strap, again just made out of a couple of bits of cardboard cut to the right sort of shape and then stuck together to give it some thickness. You can see I've stuck it onto his body and then I've paper mache'd over the top as well to strengthen it. You can see I've also added his helmet, so you've got that arrow shape at the front, again like doubled up the cardboard, and then I think I doubled it up again, so it's got 4 layers of cardboard for that helmet to make it really nice and thick. But yeah, pleased with the strap, and I think it's got a bit of nice texture on it because of all of the paper mache over the top, so that should look really cool when it's painted up. This just shows you the shape of the side parts of the helmet. Again, I think that's looking pretty good. I may need to add even more thickness, but there will be detailing added to this as well using the Milliput again. I remember already having the urge to want to get on and paint this even at this stage, even though I knew I still had a lot more to do to it. I really just wanted to get the paints out because I knew that it was going to look so much better all painted up. Okay, this is him basically finished apart from all of the painting stages obviously, but what you can see here is all the details that I've added. So I've added a ridge underneath his lower lip, I've added all of the little plates on his shoulders and the kind of ridges as well. I've done all of the leather seams all the way down the front of his chest. I've done all of the ridges and things around the helmet, so you can see them all here. They were just done with Milliput, and then I used crumpled up aluminium foil just to press down to give a texture all the way around them. little kind of rivets and things added as well to the helmet, and those will all be painted up to look as much like metal as possible. These are those leather seams that I was talking about down the front of his chest. If you have a look, the way I did the main strips was to kind of just roll like a long thin roll of Milliput, squash it on, and then cut it with a sharp knife. And Milliput does this thing where it can kind of break into like little cracks and things all the way along it if you cut it in a particular way when it's a particular kind of dryness of Milliput. And it did work, and those little cracks actually look quite a lot like the cracks that you get in leather. So you can see I've done it here all the way around this front chest plate. I also rolled all of those little stud shapes and stuck those on with super glue. I made them separately, and the super glue will hold them nice and strong, and then I can paint and glue over the top to make it even stronger. I'll show you a few more details that I've added to the face. You can see basically at the top of the nose I rolled some really long thin sausages of Milliput, and I just put them right over, and then I've blended those in. I've done the same just above the eyebrows and for the sort of corners of the eyes as well. These are those kind of ridges I was talking about underneath his lower lip. Again, kind of smooth them in, and the paint will do all the rest for me. Those are the corners of the eyes. Again, just kind of little kind of lines and cracks at the corners of the eyes, just to add a bit of further detail. On the back of a Gamorrean Guard head, just underneath the sort of helmet area, they have this massive kind of round leather kind of covering, and I've just made it like this with a whole load of aluminium foil all squashed up. It's quite a lot of aluminium foil, but it kind of balances the back of his head with the front of his head, so you do need to put it on, even though this thing's only going to really be viewed probably more from the front. I think it adds to it anyway, and I'll be able to paint this in a subtly different colour so it looks like different shade of leather to the rest. So for the first painting stage, I literally just painted the whole of him black. I'm using System 3 acrylic to do all of the painting for this guy. If you have a look, the only bit that I've really missed is a sort of rim around his eyes, around the marbles. Everything else is just painted black. This is a real good chance to try and get the black down into all of those deepest areas and literally cover everything. This will just be the kind of the shadows, if you like, on the whole build. So it's a really good way of doing it. It means everything else pretty much can be kind of dry brushed over the top, or just kind of little subtle washes of colour. Okay, you might not be able to see what I've done at this stage, but it's literally just going in with a very dark brown, and I've kind of dry brushed that over all of the leather area on his chest. I think you might just be able to make out that it's a bit lighter looking than the black, but it doesn't show up particularly well on camera. But I thought at this stage it's starting to look like leather straight away. So I was really pleased with this, like how all the kind of the wrinkles and things from the kitchen paper and the sort of PVA glue, that texture that you get is really nice, and it can really end up looking quite leathery. I thought the effect that I was getting from the seams that I made as well was really starting to work, even just with this dark brown, and I know I'll be adding a lot lighter browns over the top. Okay, the leather section for the back of the head, you can see I've just gone in with a much lighter brown over the whole thing, and it's just making it show up as being a bit different to the rest of the leather on the helmet and on the chest area. Right, this is after adding a dark green, letting that dry, and then coming back in with a really quite bright, vivid green, and you can see it gives quite a scary effect quite quickly. This will all be kind of subtled down later, but it's working quite well. It starts to look a lot more like a Gamorrean Guard, obviously, as soon as it's got some green on it. So I was really keen to kind of get this stage done as quickly as possible. Then I can start being a bit subtler afterwards. So all of that green that you just saw was all dry brushed. I've done the same thing on this stage with silver. So if you haven't done any dry brushing before, it's a brilliant technique. basically means you just take some paint on your brush, you rub it on a bit of kitchen paper until your brush is almost dry, almost completely out of paint, and then you just rub the brush over the top surfaces of things. So if you want to ever get a sort of texture of metal and a look of metal, if you just use silver paint, that's all I've used here, just silver literally over the top of what I had painted black, then you can just dust it over all of these surfaces and it picks up all of the things like the rivets and the textures and that kind of thing, and it really does make it look like metal. I think in real life it looks even more like metal, but hopefully this video should at least allow you to see some of the kind of the shines and things as I move the camera about. It just picks up that sort of silvery metal look and you get that really nice shimmer. So I've done it all over, like you can see the ridges on the sides of the helmet, all of those little rivets and things. I think where it ended up looking best was on the chest plate at the front, because the rivets on the chest plate are kind of, they were made to kind of stand out a bit more, stick out. You can see the shoulder pads worked quite well as well. All of those little flat areas that the rivets are stuck on the top of, the flat areas were then pressed into with kind of crushed up aluminium foil to give it that kind of nice texture. And that all shows up really well because all of the little deep dents and everything remain black, and it's only the top surfaces that show up as kind of being glossy and metallic. So yeah, look at these rivets at the front. I was particularly pleased with these. I thought they looked, almost as shiny as kind of ball bearings or something like that. Right, this is him finished, and I hope the camera does him justice because in real life I am really chuffed with how this one's ended up looking. So I've added little hints of reddish colours into his lips and his nose. I've added cream colour to the horns and the teeth. I've gone around the eyes and brightened them up with some even brighter greens. I've added bright greens as well to like the sort of the top uppermost surfaces of anything like the chin and the ridges below the eyes, that kind of thing. And what I've also done is come in with a much lighter cream colour at the tips of the horns and the tips of the teeth, and I've added more of a reddish brown colour to the lower parts of the teeth. On the strap I've just come in with a dull grey, so I haven't used silver for that, just a dull grey, and that's added that nice matte effect to the strap. You can see the effect of the leather quite clearly, I think, coming with quite a few even lighter browns. He just has a real presence to him. I mean, it obviously really helps that he's quite large, quite sort of formidable looking, and yeah, when he's with you in a room, you do get a sense that he's sort of looking at you. I think it really helped as well that right at the end, I took some spray lacquer and I just sprayed that on the front of his face, like over his lips and his teeth and his nose, and it really does give him that sort of wet look, which really helps him again to look quite real. You do obviously have to use a gloss lacquer to give that really kind of wet look. I sprayed it once quite thickly and then let that dry and then did another coat that was quite thick over the top of that. For the base I just used a thin layer of crumpled up aluminium foil covered with PVA glue and kitchen paper just to strengthen it, and then I painted that whole thing black just because I wanted him to be the main focal point, obviously. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Hit subscribe to see anything that I post up in the future. I'd like to say thanks to Milliput for sponsoring this channel. If you haven't tried Milliput before, go out and get yourself a pack because it really is a really cool modelling material. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.